Hello everyone, Azzapp here, and today we're going to talk about the number one thing that ruins solo queue. This video might get a little bit longer and convoluted and more complex, but don't worry, we're going to keep it very neatly segmented. And if you have any sort of criticism or problems with it, I implore you to leave a nice comment and stick till the very end, because I will be addressing every single argument that I could find. So what is the number one thing that ruins most games? Most people would say something like, it's Riot, it's hostage holding, it's trolls, it's bad teammates, it's bad matchmaking, it's bad items, it's Hullbreaker, it's Yone. Hullbreaker with Yone, good contender. But no, the number one thing that ruins most games is you. That's right, currently surrendering and giving up too early is the biggest problem in League. Such a free ass game. No! No, 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 no! Oh! Why do players sabotage themselves, their own games, and their own long-term fun? Just thinking about it, it makes no sense. Why is it happening? Now let me explain how we got here and why is this happening. There are many big forces at play and I'm able to identify a few. For one, starting with us, we as humans are very permeable and adaptable species. The systems we set up can nudge and prime our behavior in certain patterns. It's a quite remarkable thing to be able to cooperate, being the very primitive savanna mammals that we are. So keep that in mind, because the systems actually dictate a lot of the behavior that happens. So quick recap of League of Legends. Since Season 8, the game has been significantly speeding up due to the new champions and patches. Riot tried to change the esport layer because they were averaging only a few kills per game during Worlds, and the game was nearly solved at around Season 5. So the champion release strength kept increasing. If you visualize this, that means that the average champion strength increases, game gets faster, minions and turrets mean very much less, more power shift to the champion than the player, there's less comebacks, less people wanting to try to play, and that feeds the infinite feedback loop, which means there's less people trying, which means there's less comebacks means even less people trying. This has been going on for quite a long time. Also, Riot was engaging in bottom to top balancing approach for years, which means you always take the weakest champion and then you bump it slightly above the average, which further increases the average character strength. So with every new champion release, with every new rework, with every new patch, every patch has more buffs than nerfs, the champion strength keeps getting stronger and stronger. Riot has to keep inventing and being creative so the characters keep on breaking the standard rules and patterns. The entire issue has been stacking for years, and I've advised for smaller patches. I wanted to have more nerfs than buffs in order to create a bit of top to bottom style of balancing that would decrease the average strength or cancel it out a little bit. Even if only done just in alternating to offset, it would buy us years before the inevitable breaking point. You can see why the radical durability patches were needed, because that is the breaking point essentially, where the game becomes so fast that it doesn't exist. When the games are so fast that nobody plays them post-draft. You play up until First Blood and that's it. It became a brawler, a skirmisher, as opposed to the brilliant chess-like game that it used to be. So as the game is speeding up, Riot wants to enable players to leave the games earlier. They give the surrender at 15, then they made it non-unanimous at 15, which was a ridiculous mistake.
No way.
Bastard!
That's how I spend my 15 minutes.
In a competitive setting, in my opinion, surrender is only needed when there's a severe disadvantage when you're playing 4v5. It really makes no sense otherwise. Surrender was needed back in the day, because back in the day, system couldn't tell when a game was actually 4v5, 3v5, when you had an AFK, when you had a troll, and all of that. The systems now are much more sophisticated. They can actually see this, they can understand it. They even penalize those players and give you loss mitigation. Honestly, in a competitive game, League is an anomaly compared to other games, because not many games have a free way out in a competitive setting. Normal games, sure, but a ranked game should probably not have an easy way out unless the game is super unfair.
What? What? They just... What the fuck? I'm 15 kills! I'm gonna kill this game! What are you doing? Bro, I'm 15 kills!
It has been super normalized for years, and now this has become a big part of the culture, the FF culture, where people just surrender after any tiny deviation of their plan. Another big contributor is my brethren. So what happens is people love characters. They really respond. People respond way better and more to emotions, which means shouting streamers become the top strata that bubbles up to the surface. In some cases, it might even go and be straight up toxic, but it's all the show for you to enjoy at home. This will inevitably feed the average user a skewed image of how to act in a game, because people just have to do that for the sake of their character or for the sake of creating a show. Everything's going to be blown out of proportion. Romanticizing the idea of running it down early FFs, going AFK, constantly typing, flaming, whatever. So another reason that happens here is that most streamers that get to the top are extremely good at the game and they possess incredible game knowledge. People will try to emulate their behavior. For example, if dodging is a climbing mechanic in really high elo, if you possess good enough game knowledge, you can understand what is good draft, what is bad draft, and you use it, you are inadvertently creating insane amount of bad dodges down the line. People will try to copy high elo streamers thinking that they know what is a good dodge, where in reality a low elo player doesn't really know what is a good dodge. They don't know when they've been outdrafted, they don't know what is unplayable, and even if you are outdrafted and you have only 45% chance to win instead of 50 or 55 which you would prefer, that is completely offset in low elo because of player disparity or if your individual skill is good. So it's no reason to dodge games ever. So I can trust a lot of high elo players to know what they're doing. Same exact thing is happening with surrendering. I can trust really good players like Nemesis to know with 99% certainty when a game is lost or over. Obviously, that requires insane game knowledge, and you're also assuming enemies are gonna play it perfectly. Now, I do not grant that to the enemies. I'd like to test it out even if they are challengers. You have two types of mistakes presented to you, basically depending on how you design the system. And I would much rather prefer the type A mistake to the type B mistake here. Or that is, I will play a game that is lost rather than lose a game that is winnable. But I will ask you this, if you had to choose between never surrendering or the current state with massive over surrendering, I will always choose the former. Now what do? I have another question to all the people who are crying about hostaging, because you're basically dealing with hostaging or surrendering early games and ruining the game. How many games in the past week have you lost because people gave up instantly? Especially if you play a lot, especially if you play Master Reload. How many have you lost instantly without fighting back, without having a chance to fight back because people just instantly give up? Versus how many games you were kept in that were undoubtedly unwinnable. Think about it real hard and try to be honest. When the accept button pops up on your screen, you click on it. You commit to a game that you know can last that long. You're not forced to be here. You're not playing against your own will. You committed to a 30-minute game, just like in Counter-Strike 2. You committed to a game and you should play it out because it is ranked. It is competitive. I've made some shorts, I've made some tweets on this topic, and honestly, the replies are surprising. I got about 50-50 replies, some responses positive to this idea, some responses negative, some memes here and there, but it inspired me to make this video because I figured there's a lot more people than I thought who are thinking the system through to its ultimate conclusion and thinking about the longevity of the game, thinking in the long term and not just about their next 12 minutes and how are they going to do with that. So now I'm going to start addressing pretty much every argument that I've seen since I started publicly speaking about over-surrendering. There's a good reason why vast majority of high elo players rather FF and go next than try hard an extremely difficult game for possibly no reward. Or there's another argument akin to this one, which I'm going to address both. Korean region won the most worlds and they spam FF the most, so you're wrong. Now these are both ridiculous. Hey, did you know that average Korean listens to way more K-pop than the average Westerner and they won most worlds? Huh, think about that. It's crazy. The reason why Korea surrenders the most has to do with their culture, not the game knowledge. It's not exactly to, oh, I know everything. Surrender percentage is directly tied to the culture. I have actually been to Korea and I've got Challenger over there. Their SoloQ culture arose because most players play from PC banks, which we did visit on stream. People want to save money and play as many games as possible. Not to mention the Korean SoloQ is literally the most unenjoyable SoloQ out there to play. They surrender so much that most SoloQ players don't even know how to play late game. Feel free to consult on this with any other streamer, pro player who has ever traveled there. Trust me.
We can win. Can win.
Okay.
My reasoning here is that surrendering is grossly overused to the point of ruining most games out of all causes possibly in the game. And now I'm gonna go back to the former argument, which is very, very obvious. Naturally, as you move up the ladder, surrendering becomes more frequent. Why is that? Because people have more knowledge when the game is over. It's harder to surprise enemies, enemy efficiency is better, Vink ones are more obvious, throwing happens less, obviously. It's no mystery why high elo players surrender more often. Now I'm gonna have to go into an argument from experience because I just cannot summon up non-existent data here. I believe that despite all of that, high elo players, even challengers, currently are surrendering too much. It's gotten to the point of detriment where they know less about the game, closing out games properly and avoiding throws. But what about the data that states that only 3.3% games that are 4-1 surrenders pre-14 are won? This is before when Riot was debating whether to enable non-unanimous surrender pre-15. So let's look at that. First of all, in a world where surrender exists and it's extremely common and culturally ingrained so deeply, cannot compare to a world where surrendering was never an option. If we're discussing about surrendering never being an option, the percentage of these games would go insanely up. Obviously, many players, when they decide that they want to surrender, they want the game to end. They become a self-fulfilling prophecy where their sole goal is to get their teammates to give up. It's perverse and it completely trashes the data down the drain. But for this hypothetical, let's say it's even close to that. It's correct number. People are just fundamentally bad at statistics and data. So I've seen arguments something like, but why would I play out a bunch of games if only 10% of them I'm going to win? Even if you use the number as low as 5% of winnable games, if you were to play out 100 of them, that would mean that you're gonna win 5 of them, which means you just got net worth of 250 LP, which can be a massive difference to your elo. That's not many games to play, not many games to try, and you actually get massive advantage. Not only do you prevent the loss of 25, but you also gain 25, so that is the net gain of 50. The game is simply too snowbally. If you lose early, you will lose the game immediately. Now, this is completely untrue. This is a pure fabrication that people are just, they obviously have lag and delay, and they haven't adapted currently to the current meta, because even by Riot metrics, they've stated that the current snowball stats are that of season 8, which is the last decent solo queue season. The game is not extremely snowbally right now. There's many comeback mechanics. The death timers are fine, the bounties are good there, the dragons are lower, not as snowbally. People need actually soul to make it to mean something. Plates mean less, so that is just complete lag by the community in terms of thinking about the game and having a proper perception on it. Okay, there's one that I'm gonna partially agree with. If surrendering gets removed, people will int AFK more. This is actually one that would come true, but probably for a month and not more. There would be a few players who would obviously ramp up their inting. They're going AFK, they would just want to get out of the game as soon as possible, which is fine. That would probably increase. My guess is that would increase. That's the same thing as talking about game quality if you add voice chat. The game quality would probably go down like few percent at the start until people get accustomed to the voice chat and the game rapidly skyrockets and reaches new heights. The same thing would happen if you remove FF. Within a month, people would adapt and the best players would obviously try. And you would get in the games where people try. People wouldn't try to force you and then terrorize you into going AFK or surrendering because you can't do that. If you're trying, you're trying. Everyone knows you're locked in the game. Might as well try to have fun and try to win. It's a win-win essentially. So this one might be correct like in the short term, but in the long term, it would just yield so many more benefits. I have a job / school. I can only play a few games a day. I'd rather not spend 40 minutes in a lost game that it was a certain loss of 10 minutes. Now, would you rather play one high quality but a long game where you would, even if you lose, you still improve the game knowledge by playing in the long term, you derive enjoyment from actually having a fun, good game instead of just stomping enemies for like 10-15 minutes in coin flips. Like, oh, I flipped a bad coin, I'm gonna quit. Oh, I beat enemies in 7 minutes, now they're gonna FF. That's just Q simulator at that point. You're not fighting any tough battles. I don't know, honestly. I mean, that one's on you to decide. I don't think that's very appealing to me, but it's your call. In low elo, enemies get so fed that my teammates don't know how to play. I need to FF to get out of those games. I mean, have you ever seen any really high quality players get stuck in low elo? Not really. So if you truly believe you belong somewhere, you will eventually climb out, and the way you do that is actually by playing out the games. You cannot go in a game assuming enemies are going to play it perfectly in Silver 4. You simply can't, because then you're never going to get better, you're never going to win games, you're never going to improve, because guess what? You're going to be wrong. Most of the time, enemies are actually not that good, they just seem good in early game, and you're going to give up games that were totally winnable. So for the time wasted playing these games, for that extra time, you could queue up more games and climb more. That's a very interesting proposition, which is not true, because you can easily do the math. The only time it would be worth for you to skip playing bad games so you can spam more games is if your win rate is so ridiculously high and it's close to 70% if you do the math. This is super ironic, which means at 70% win rate, you are actually smurfing, and you're an incredibly better player than the current elo, which would make your chance of comeback much higher in the first place. So in order for your surrendering to be worth, you have to be such a good player to be able to win much more of those surrender games in the first place. So further pushes the equation back into the favor of playing them out. This has been brewing for 5 years, perhaps even longer. The FF culture is super strong. It's erroneous to the game. I have no machinations of surrender, AFK, give up culture vanishing. Like, that's just simply not gonna happen. Again, if we were to remove it instantly, it would probably hit the quality in the short term. It would inevitably bounce back and be better than ever in a month or two, but that's probably too much to sacrifice and too much risk for Riot to take. So to propose a solution, I would like, and I think it would be much better if surrender is unanimous at 15, and after 20 it's 4-1, because in those 5 minutes you can discover so much more. You're either gonna turn a bunch of people onto your side of actually playing the game out by giving them hope, by making some good plays, or the game's gonna completely break. Enemies are either gonna end or you're gonna surrender. Surrender pop-up is terrible. It kills the momentum, it kills the immersion. People spam it tiltingly mid-fight. One guy will get caught and you're fighting, and then you're gonna see a pop-up. That just has to go. So it should be an anonymous vote on the scoreboard. So when you think the game is lost, you open tab, you tick the box, boom, you are there to surrender, the number goes up. If enough people do it, the game is terminated. I think that's just the most simple and elegant solution to this. So let's get to the conclusion. Are there unwinnable games? Yes. Do you know which games are unwinnable? Most certainly no. If you want to have fun, it's in your best interest to derive pleasure from high quality games and play everything out. If you want to learn the game better and become an overall better player, it is in your best interest to play everything out. If you want to climb, mathematically speaking, it is in your best interest to play everything out. I know this video won't do much, but if you're willing to give it a chance, I implore you to just try it out. Just give it a go as if the surrender vote is disabled, and see how much more enjoyable the games are. I hope you guys enjoyed the videos. If you have any feedback, I greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to see any more of this content, support the channel via Patreon, Twitch, YouTube, any other means. Just being a part of the community, chatting, communicating, following along, that's more than enough. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.